All right, guys, so real quick, I just wanted to address this question and talk about it and expound on it a little bit of why gospel bass players tune down a half step or a whole step. Now, sorry about that. My camera just shut off for some reason, so I'm just switching to another camera. I think my card might be full. Anyway, I just wanted to address why do gospel bass players tune down. Now, one of my mentors, who is one of the greatest gospel bassists period, is Andrew Gouche, and his track record is ridiculous. He's been on so many albums, played with so many different people, and he's known for his sound and his style. You know exactly who it is when you're listening to a record or listening to him. He has such a distinct sound, and one of the things he's known for is tuning down a whole step. And he plays 6-string bass. So he's tuned down a whole step. So his regular tuning, the regular tuning is B, E, A, D, G. His tuning will be A. His first lowest string will be an A. Very, very low string. Now, why did they do this? I know a lot of guys that actually tune down. Most of them do a half step. It used to be a half step, but now more so nowadays, a lot of guys are doing the whole step thing. But the story that Andrew Gouche told me, he was saying that one of his favorite bassists, Joel Smith, he played bass as well, also drums, but he played bass and he was tuning down a half step, and Gouche just said, I wanted to be lower than Joel. So he tuned down a whole step, so he tuned to A. So that's what started him tuning to A. But at the same time, there are other benefits that come from tuning down a whole step or a half step with gospel music. Now, more so with a 4-string back in the day, I think that's all that you could do. That's all the options that people had, was just 4-string basses in the beginning. But I know of guys that used to tune down a half step because they wanted to get the E, the low E flat. All right, they'll tune down their first string, which would, I have a 5-string now, but their first string will be a E, but they wanted to get a low E flat, but they would have to come up to the 6th fret. Have to come up to the 6th fret to get that E flat, but you had to go higher to get a low E flat. So you don't really want to sacrifice the low E flat to get a high E flat. So they would just tune down a half step to get that low E flat, and their open string would be that E flat. Okay, and that's with a 4-string. With a 5-string, same thing. They tune down a half step, you get the B flat. Now, another thing, most songs in gospel are based around the flat keys or the sharp keys, whatever you want to call them. A flat, F sharp, C sharp, E flat. Those keys are very known. They're very popular in gospel music. A lot of the gospel hymns and things like that are in A flat or C sharp. So just having an open string to be able to execute that note or execute the low note, even if the song is in E flat, to be able to have that open string ring. And at the same time, that open string ring has a different tone than the actual note. So say if I'm playing an E. All right, so I'm playing an E on my 5-string on the 5th fret. Now let's play an open E. You hear the difference? Versus, it's very minute. You might not be able to hear it on here, but check it out. When you're playing a 5-string, or if you do play a 5-string, just even so, just play you can do it with an A. That's fine. You can do it with an A. You can play with an A. So A on the 5th fret, E string, then play your open A. Now you can hear a little bit more with that one. The lower one was a little bit harder to hear because of the frequency. So you get a different tone and a different sound just from having that open A string or open A flat. Now some of you may think that's a little bit much just to tune down for a specific song or something, but most guys, they stay tuned like that, and they would learn their scales, they will learn their notes, they will learn the theory of the bass tuned that way, just not standard tuning. So they have to learn a completely different way than guys that played with standard tuning did. It's the same thing. Because they're used to it so much, they ended up just staying right there and learning their notes. Because if they're tuned down a whole step, you know, and they play a C, it doesn't look like a C. Their C is not here. You know what I mean? Their C is here. So it's a little bit different. They have to learn and kind of, you know, adjust their brain to do that. Now I know several guys that have tuned in the middle of their playing career. So they have tuned down a half step or tuned down a whole step, and it's a little bit of a struggle trying to learn that positioning and just getting used to hearing it. And there was one more thing that Andrew Gouche was telling me. when he tuned down, he has perfect pitch. So being able to identify a note just like that without an instrument, to be able to sing a note and be spot on. Okay, he has perfect pitch. So when he would play his bass, you know, and he would see his finger doing one thing, you know, and hearing another thing, if he was tuned differently, you know, it was too off for him. It was too difficult to be able to play like that, because he was already trained his ear to hear a certain note, and if he was looking at his hand and not hearing that note, it would just completely mess him up. So he had to stay tuned in A. So he learned his notes, learned everything he needed to know with that standard tuning. And it's funny because I feel the same way when I play somebody else's bass that is tuned down. Like, I have to tune it up, you know, just so I can feel right. You know, if I'm playing a certain note and I'm looking at it and it just doesn't feel right, or it just doesn't sound, I don't have perfect pitch. I mean, it's pretty close, but I don't have perfect pitch. But it still feels a little bit, you know, weird to play something like that. So I have to tune whoever's bass I'm playing up to standard tuning. I'm so used to playing standard tuning. Now, I did tune down a half step for a little while. I did grow up in church and play gospel, but at the same time, I studied classical outside of church and jazz as well throughout my school years. But at the same time, I wanted to figure out, or wanted to see the advantage of tuning down to see if it would actually help me or see if it'll feel better. Now, like the 3 or 4 months that I actually did that and tried to do that, I had to go home and retune my bass again, you know, to be able to teach or to be able to, you know, study music, because where my fingers weren't playing the notes that they were supposed to play. So I was always in the wrong key, and I had to shift my mind. I was so used to studying and playing that way on the bass, I couldn't get used to it. So I understood why it does help, because there was a song in B flat. Even recently, there was a song in, it was like B flat minor or C, you know, D flat major. But I played on that track. One of the great gospel producer asked me to play on this track, and I did it not too long ago. And the lowest note that I wanted to play was a B flat. I was like, man, how can I get that low B flat? So when people ask me to do tracks and, you know, record songs like that for them, I might, for the time being, tune down a half step so I can achieve that low B flat. I used to tune down just one string, but that was way too difficult to process. But anyway, I would tune down the whole bass a half step, every single string, and I played that song just like that. I'll play a little bit of a clip for you right now. As you can see, I was still comfortable with the down tuning, but right after that song, I had to tune it right back up to standard tuning so I wouldn't lose my mind. And those are just some of the reasons why gospel bass players tune down a half step or a whole step. Now, you have to keep in mind that when you tune down a whole step or a half step, you lose the tension of your strings. So you have to make sure your bass is set up properly so you don't have just strings flopping around everywhere, and it'll sound terrible. The strings will be very, very loose, and you don't want that. All right, guys, I hope I answered you guys' question, and I'll probably do a couple of interviews with some guys that actually tune down so they can better explain it than I can, because I'm still not a down tuner guy. I'm still standard tuning. I teach way too much, and I play way too much, and I read and sight read way too much to be able to tune down a half step right now at this point of my music career. But anyway, and I'll be answering some more of you guys' questions. Just let me know if you want to see more of this. Oh yeah, also comment below if you want to see me do like a vlogging kind of thing where I'm just playing and traveling or touring or gigging, just to see a little bit of behind the scenes of what happens, especially just with me. All right, until next time, see you.